Yeah.
Okay, you go.
Have the official.
Thank you, Media Committee. Welcome, everyone, to the first meeting of the 2016 Planning Board. First, I want to thank the Town Board real quickly for their confidence in me to continue leading this very robust and august board, and also for their confidence in reappointing Chris Oliver, who's been a very valued member, and he's back on for their 7-year term, so thank you. And with everyone's forbearance, I'd like to also thank my colleagues to my right and left for agreeing to be vice chairs again, and I'm going to read the resolution, making them vice chairs, just in case I have a heart attack at the next moment, and one of you has to lead it. This is Resolution 16-A, resolution designating planning board vice chairpersons for the year 2016. Now be it resolved that Ann Dexter and Robert Gronin should be designated the vice chairpersons of the planning board, authorized to conduct meetings of the planning board and to sign final plats and related documents, including invoices and correspondence on behalf of the planning board in the absence of the chairperson.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
One absent, no abstentions or nays, I take it? Thank you. We'll start that right now. My apologies, everyone. Let's salute the American flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for noticing my oversight. The first item on the agenda is continued public hearing for Matt's Used Auto Parts. May I get a motion to reopen the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone want to come up, or do you want me to blather for a while about? Okay, we had a very lively meeting last time. So what I'm going to preface this first on saying is that we did take everyone's comments very seriously, and Vice Chair Dexter and I did a site walk on our own, and then I walked the site also with the town engineer. So to preface it all, there is no change being proposed to the site. It is a quirk of our code that you have to have a site plan in an owner's name in order to get the license to operate a salvage yard. In this case, even though the current owners, the Molts, have an approved site plan, with Mr. Tickney wanting to buy it, he has to have one in his name. But again, there are no changes being proposed. Having looked at the code carefully and then consulted with an attorney as well as someone who helped write the code originally, it appears that the reason why this quirk is there is that they would like, for whenever there's a transfer of a non-conforming use, which this is none of our salvage yards in town are actually in locations where they would be permitted. So all they want us to do is check to make sure that the site plan is being complied with. The board has done that. I'm satisfied that we have the information tonight to take action, and that's what I'm going to recommend we do. In the meantime, one of the biggest issues that we heard was stormwater. Ms. Dexter and I, when we first walked the site, looking at 49 Honeywell Lane, noticed that it's actually, and unfortunately, at the bottom of a bowl, so to speak. The properties that are directly across Honeywell sit at a much higher elevation, and the property behind it, which the Molts own, also sits at a much higher elevation. There is also a small, and I do mean now, very narrow wetland that's obvious because of the hydrophytic vegetation present, specifically Phragmites, or catanine, whatever they're called up here, cattails. They tell you, but what they don't tell the full story is that it seems apparent that at one point, that was a much wider wetland. It looks as though when the residences were installed and constructed, that there was probably some fill in order to create backyards. There's nothing wrong with that back then, because that's what people did. Now we know that you don't dewater wetlands because it just displaces the water someplace else. At any rate, Mr. Sotero and Ms. Dexter and I all walked the entire area. There are pipes, an 18-inch one, that sit underneath Honeywell Lane, even though it sits a little high in terms of making the stream of the wetland drain completely. I can't see that anything we could make the Molts do or Mr. Ticconi would actually ameliorate any occasional problems there. I also need to add that there were very clearly items stored. Household items are stored in the wetland. If I see big wooden pallets, chairs, other things stored in there, that's going to help displace water too and force the water up to rise. So there's been some issues over the years, the way it's operated, way it's been constructed, but at the same time, by this point, everything seems to be working well, and Mr. Sotero, who's a professional engineer, and again, toured the site, does not believe that there's anything that the Molts could do or have done that is caused any of the drainage issues in that area. Again, it's just topography that's causing this, and it's unfortunate. Probably these days, the planning board would not allow houses to be built there. That's just the long and the short of it. The other issues we heard primarily were noise. I need to address the fact that there are already hours of operation posted on the site. Customers are not allowed in to do any work inside after 5 o'clock and at 3 o'clock on the weekends. There is natural noise associated with the site. Mr. Molt, subsequent to his appearance at the last meeting, sent us a very detailed memorandum answering each of the points, one of which was the noise, which, as he pointed out, there have been more activities lately around the site, even after it closes to customers, mainly because they're getting it in readiness to sell, which makes sense because they've been moving things around, making an inventory, taking a look at everything, so Mr. Taccone, the proposed new owner, will be able to know just what he's buying. In addition, he supplied information that was corroborated today by a positive letter we received from a neighboring resident writing in favor of the change and the granting of the site plan, that the Molts have over the years allowed the fire departments to come through and actually do practices with chains of life. I think it's jaws of life, see? Jaws of life, which is actually very valuable training for our fire department and allows there to be an increased safety in the event of accidents. So between the two, that should take care of what the planning board issues would be. Beyond that, if there's continued noise, then what they're going to have to do, the neighbors, is contact the police department because we do have a noise ordinance, and that's the best way to solve this. But I might add, just as an analogy, I have a neighbor who once complained that she had to look at a light that a neighbor had on his front porch all night long, and that she couldn't sleep. She contacted the planning board about this. This is not an issue for the planning board. People are allowed to do things. If I, for example, had a home occupation, let's say I made slipcovers, if I didn't let customers come over after 5 o'clock, I could still make slipcovers until the wee hours. If I was making too much noise, the neighbors would be able to call the police. They'd come in and say, stop making those slipcovers, whatever. But that's how this is best handled. Sorry for those sort of silly analogies, but that's, I think, the best way to do it. So in the interim, the other issue we had was seemingly solved by the Molt speaking to their new neighbors who had bought the house. There appeared to be vehicles parked on the other side of a property line, specifically the south and maybe a little bit of the east. When Ms. Dexter and I walked the site, we discussed this with the Molts. They'd already started moving some of the cars. The next issue became how would our zoning administrator know if that's a condition, where the property line is. Just, I believe it was this morning, Ms. Molt found that there was a 2004 survey, and she further discovered that what we call monuments, basically markers that will show where the property line is, still exist. So we have a condition written to the resolution that states that we need a survey showing it so that when they do finish moving the vehicles over, that Ms. Moss can say, yep, everything is complying with the site plan, it's all on their property. She just needs to verify that the monuments are there, and she was not able to do that today. I hope she'll be able to get out before there's snow, so I will talk to her about going out tomorrow, or get into her schedule, put it that way. So it looks as though every issue that we had raised has been solved. And I want to compliment the owners for being so agreeable and so industrious as to work on this, and also compliment Ms. Dexter for taking an hour and a half of time out to go down, and also thank Mr. Sotero for doing it as well. So let me start over to my left. Any comments?
No, you stated it clear.
Mr. Groninger?
There was just one other thing that was mentioned, and that was the racing of cars on that road, the burning of tires and that sort of thing on a country road, that apparently this is an acknowledged problem, but this totally has to be addressed by the Hyde Park Police Department. This is definitely not an issue that you can mention before the planning board, but it's not something we can address. So any individual having this problem, watching this or whatever, really, that's the right recourse. Call the Hyde Park Police, ask them to please monitor the area.
Thank you. I should have added just anecdotally that we did look to see if there were any rubber tracks going in and out of the site. There are none. If you're traveling from Quaker down, you can go pretty fast. If you're coming from Cream, from the long way of Honeywell, you can't really go that fast because there's a huge curve around. So I don't really know who's doing this, but this is a problem that probably exists on lots of the more rural areas of the roads where kids just want to speed. But again, the solution there would not be for us to try to restrict something like that because it's an enforcement nightmare, and we can't prove that this is anybody doing anything that involves the actual salvage parts. While Ms. Dexter and I were there, the most activity we saw were people dropping off cars, a lot of them. And that does mean that heavy equipment is used to move them to appropriate storage once you've figured out an inventory of them. So it's a very busy site. I guess when we did it before for the subdivision, it didn't seem as busy. Maybe it's just there've been accidents, who knows? But at any rate, interestingly, one of the vehicles we saw was a BMW, and from afar it looked good. When we got close, it was full of pine needles that had been dumped on somebody's property, and they just wanted to move it. So that's how some of these things occur. Ms. Dexter, anything to add?
I think you've covered everything well, and Robert brought up the other point about the speeding on the road, which I agree is kind of a common problem on the rural roads here. They do it right on our road down the way. No, I'm comfortable having visited the site, and especially seeing that there's a survey available and the monuments are there, that this can all be taken care of post haste.
Thank you. Chris?
Just want to thank the applicants for taking the time to, work with us on getting all the documentation and going through this, and best of luck on the sale, and best of luck to the new owner in Hyde Park.
Ms. DiNapoli?
I like to think it was the Christmas spirit that pulled everything together. Happy New Year, everyone.
Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? There being none, making a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And who has this file?
I do. Resolution granting site plan and special use permit approval, Matt's Auto Parts, resolution number 15-50A. Whereas now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 108-9.4C of the zoning law, and planning board hereby waives the requirement for the formal site plan required by section 108-25.3 of the code, as the site is pre-existing non-conforming site and no change or expansion is proposed. Be it further resolved that the planning board makes the following findings pursuant to section 108-8.4 of the zoning law. 1, project will comply with the applicable requirements of Articles 4 and 5 of the zoning law. The scrapyard has been operating without violation for several years, and no changes to the operation are proposed. The applicant will be required to mark certain property boundaries as condition of approval to ensure that the cars do not encroach onto the neighboring lot. 2, the project is consistent with the purposes of the zoning law. The use is a pre-existing non-conforming use which is being expanded. The zoning law permits the continuation of legal non-conforming uses. 3, the project will not result in any excessive off-premises noise, dust, odors, solid waste, or glare. No changes to the current operation are proposed. A neighbor located at 49 Honeywell Drive raised an issue regarding drainage from the site. The planning board and its engineer conducted a site walk and have determined that the properties in the area of 49 Honeywell Drive sit lower than the road, and that the project site does not adversely impact neighboring properties. 4, the project will not cause significant traffic congestion or overload existing roads. And 5, the proposed use is suitable for the site and its proposed intensity. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants the site plan approval to the project as shown on the site plan entitled Site Plan Prepared for Matt's Used Auto Parts, prepared by Spencer S. Hall, LS, dated November 13, 2015, last revised December 3, 2015, and authorizes the chair or his authorized designee to sign the approved site plan after compliance with the following conditions. 1, payment of all fees in escrow. 2, removal of any vehicles encroaching on the adjacent parcel identified as lot number 6264-04-782231 as evidenced by a survey in southern eastern boundary of lot 6264-04-790298 and permanent monuments placed at the surveyed corners. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants a special use permit to Matthew Taccone to permit the continued operation of the scrapyard in accordance with the approved site plan.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously. And if there are any of the neighbors who are watching, I do want to make sure that you understand we're not making light of any of your concerns. We take them very seriously. That's why we went out. But again, the planning board can only do so much, and a lot of what I think the complaints involve are things that evolved over many, many decades and aren't really within our purview. So good luck with your business. Hope that you're still buying it and coming to town. If there's anything else you need, Ms. Molt has my telephone number. Okay? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Sheldon. The applicant is seeking a waiver of site plan review for a residence located at 28 South Drive. Everyone had a chance to review my email. Mr. Sheldon, do you want to come up and speak?
Certainly. I did take the opportunity after our meeting today to mark up a couple of drawings just to show better delineate.
Oh,
We, being broadcast.
Oh, yes.
So we can hear you, but
The rest of the world can.
correct.
TV land, yeah.
TV land.
I remember how to open
Yes.
Testing.
Sounds good.
So I brought two sets. One is colorized, one is just shaded. Just to help communicate what areas we're working or we're looking for at this point. We know we have to go to the ZBA. We know that we have to go to the ZBA for variances for some additional work that we want to do, but this will help us to get started with the approval that we're seeking this evening. Currently, it's a typical Cape-style home that is throughout the village with a detached garage, two-car garage. Our plan is, before you tonight, is to add an addition onto the front of the house. It's a two-story addition that then comes up over the top of the end of the existing home. It all falls within right of use for setbacks as necessary. I brought elevations as well. I don't know how much detail or how much, they look good if nothing else. So I guess I would open up for questions. And again, my plan would be to come back after we've been to the ZBA for some of the other variances that we need.
Yeah, in essence, because this house is on a corner, it's got two front yards,
Yeah.
like I do, even though I'm not on a corner. And I will point out, my own front door doesn't face either one of my designated front yards. But because of that, he'll need variances for some of the construction. So what they're proposing is basically a phased site plan. Phase one is all within the setback area, so no variances are needed. And the way I wrote the resolution, Tad and I discussed this afternoon, is we are waiving phase one, and it specifies that either he would need to have an approved phase two, or we would come back and request a waiver of phase two, assuming he gets the variances. And the variances are really for basically the deck, the garage expansion, and the connection between the two,
Okay.
I believe.
Yes. Yep.
So, and I also want to point out that I drove by the site myself afterwards again. Nice shutters. I hope you can auction those or
Actually, we're looking
something.
at perhaps using them as cabinets.
They're cool.
Yeah,
They really are. I forgot.
Everybody, they're a piece.
Yeah,
They're
I forgot. But I drove by, and if you go down the side road, which is Horseshoe, most of the houses look exactly like this one. They're small capes. But if you go down South Drive, which is what he faces, or they will be facing, the houses there are actually different in character.
Yeah,
They're more modern,
Yep.
and they're more sprawling. And to tell you the truth, what they're proposing actually fits better into the character of, yeah, it's going to bridge sort of between the two. I think it'll establish better the character of what South Drive is.
Yeah.
Diane lives, of course, on South Drive. She'll be one of your neighbors.
Okay.
She's like 2 houses down.
Oh, okay.
Nice to meet you.
So, and this shouldn't, or doesn't really weigh into our consideration, but the Sheldons have sold their old house in Hyde Park. They're already living here, or they're from here, and they've moved into a really tiny space. So we thought it might help them to, they're living in 500 square feet, so we thought it might help them to get going on the house now so they could move into that portion of it while they do the rest of it. So, anybody have any questions?
Just a curiosity question.
Sure.
How much are you planning to add square footage? Because it is such a small house.
I think the total square footage added to the house will be, let's see, about 800 square.
That's what I was
So
going to
like
guess.
almost doubling
Almost
it.
doubling it, yeah.
Okay,
Good for
Yeah.
you.
But still
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, we're taking a lot of effort to keep the character of the house. Like, one of the things that it may not be easy to see, but on many of the homes, you have these little pop-outs in the front.
Yeah.
And we're mimicking that in the front of this. And this house doesn't have it now, but in the new addition, it will have a little pop-out like that that kind of mimics that, that detail, so.
It's great driving by every day
Yeah.
to peek in to see how much is getting done.
Yeah, well, we're doing, just in cleaning up, we started just to try to clean up the site.
You're
There
doing
were
a fabulous
a
job
lot
on
of
the
years
property,
of
yes.
brush and
Neglect.
garbage and neglect and leaves and everything else, so we're,
Yeah, I saw your dumpster on the outside,
Yeah.
but I do want to just say, as someone who's not an immediate neighbor, but someone who lives in the village, it's nice to see reinvestment going on like this. I meant that sincerely.
yeah.
It helps everybody's property values, and it's nice to see someone want to, do this in Hyde Park, because that neighborhood's great. It's walkable into the commercial centers.
That's why we're there.
Well, it's good to-
We want
well,
to stay in the area.
Yeah, you weren't very walkable on Coleman, I have to say.
Not very walkable at all. But
Anyway, there being no other questions, I think we're ready to vote on the waiver. Who has this, who did you give this to?
That'd be me.
Aha!
Mr. Murphy.
Resolution number 16-1. Whereas an application requesting a waiver of site plan has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Perry Sheldon on December 23rd, 2015, for the property located at 28 South Drive, Town of Hyde Park, and whereas, now therefore be resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the two-story addition shown as a shaded area, Phase 1, on plans submitted January 4th in the file entitled Sheldon Residence, 28 South Drive, regarding the specific request as received December 23rd, 2015, in building permit application file for this project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't know how soon you can get started pulling the building permit. I think it takes a couple of days to get the,
We actually, we met with Don earlier this week. and,
Okay.
we got
but it should go back down, this will go down tomorrow, and that should get everything set up so you're smooth, and we'll be, at least those of us who live over, they'll be watching the progress. Thank you, and good luck with the ZBA. I don't think this is one of the ones where they require, or they ask us for a recommendation.
I would think, but
They don't usually do it for single-family residential.
I don't think they do.
So if they do, just give me a heads up, okay? Thank you.
thank you.
And two other things. One, I forgot to mention that our planning board alternate was reappointed as well. Thank you, Mr. Pickett, for agreeing to stand up. You now have a 2-year alternate term again. No, 2-year. It's set up that when I helped write the law, it's set up so that each town board has the opportunity to change the alternate. So since they have 2-year terms, you have a 2-year term too. And I thank you again too for also, you come a lot, which is great, because it keeps you, keeps you apprised of all of what's going on. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from July 1st and
15th, I think it
15th?
was. Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
And can I just say how impressed I am with the level of detail on them and the accuracy? Really nice.
The supervisor's administrative assistant, Mary Zabo, does these, and I have to say, she first had a couple of issues with individual voices, how we modulate, but once she got used to it, there's very little correction that I made. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
And it's very thorough, and she pointed out that in one of them, I forgot to, we had, I think, the Spirit of Halloween representative, who
All right.
they weren't scheduled, we started talking to her, and I forgot to ask her name, so we just put Spirit of Halloween rep, Spirit of Halloween rep. That, she said, you might want to ask their names next time. Okay.
Right on that.
Anyways, and since everyone on the board was present both nights,
Yes.
everyone can vote.
Yeah.
So making a motion to approve those 2 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other business from anyone? Making a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Media Committee.
Thank you, Media Committee. Thank you, Ann, for coming out. Thank you, Brent, again.
I thought, didn't we put anything in the garbage for you?